doing that thing again where you take everything I say out of context. You're trying to make it look like I think Coolsville sucks.
If you've seen Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, you know that this single phrase, spat out by Fred Jones, would be twisted by the reporter Heather Jasper Howe and used against Mystery Incorporated. But beyond its role in the plot, this seemingly throwaway line captures something deeper. The ever-present tension between creative passion and corporate control in animation. From Fred's own origin as a character named after a TV executive to the modern struggles of Warner Bros. Discovery's animation department. These 4 words, together and individually, tell the story of how beloved animated worlds are created, controlled, and sometimes discarded. Let's start with the first word.
Guy.
We can note here that this I is representing the identity of Fred Jones, the steadfast leader of the gang. At least that's how he was initially created to be. According to Hanna and Barbera Conversations by Kevin Sandler, TV executive Fred Silverman, then at CBS, approached Hanna-Barbera to create a cartoon about teens solving supernatural mysteries to follow the success of The Archie Show. There was talk about adding a dog, but if there was gonna be one, he was gonna be a background character. The face of the gang was gonna be this guy, Jeff, or Harvey? They were still workshopping names for the character, but Silverman wasn't satisfied. These names didn't convey the strength of leadership he envisioned. They needed something more commanding, more authoritative. In the end, Silverman chose a name he knew had power. His own. Fred. This connection to a network executive from the jump highlights the influence of network demands on creative content, a dynamic that continues to this day, as we'll see with the current state of Warner Bros. Discovery. This industrial relationship between creative and commercial forces extends beyond individual character development to shape how animated characters think. Our exploration of the word think as a cognitive process gains depth when we consider the actual process of animation at Hanna-Barbera. As documented once again in Hanna and Barbera Conversations, the creation of shows like The Yogi Bear Show and The Flintstones followed a, quote, planned animation model, end quote. This involved meticulous storyboarding and a division of labor where numerous artists and writers contributed to the final product. Bill Hanna himself emphasized that they intentionally cut down on the animation by planning ahead, indicating a strategic and predetermined approach to storytelling and character actions. Therefore, Fred's thinking here is not a spontaneous act of his animated consciousness, but rather the result of deliberate creative decisions made by the studio team. This industrialized approach stands in stark contrast to the early days of animation. Nicholas Sammond's Birth of an Industry describes figures like Winsor McKay as, quote, artisan performers, end quote, where the animator held significant individual control over the art. You can see this in McKay's films, which showcased a direct relationship between the animator and his creations. However, by the time Hanna-Barbera emerged, the industry had evolved into a, quote, highly rationalized animation industry with a hierarchical division of labor. End quote. This meant that character thoughts and actions were no longer the sole expression of a single artist, but a carefully managed outcome of a multi-step production process. Analyzing the word think in this context highlights the unique ontological status of animated characters as beings brought to life through industrial processes. Their expressions of inner thoughts are, in essence, performances, scripted and directed by human creators. Furthermore, Heather Jasper Howe's deliberate twisting of Fred's words can be seen as a dark reflection of the behind-the-scenes control exerted over animated characters and their narratives. Just as Howe crafts a deceptive narrative for the Coolsville audience, the animators and writers craft the narratives and even the thoughts themselves of the Scooby Gang, who are powerless against any changes to their own realities. Changes like
Coolsville.
Coolsville, as the hometown of Mystery Inc., was first named in a pup named Scooby-Doo decades after the original series was created. Suddenly, almost overnight, this wandering group of meddling kids had some place to call home. And they always did. and they always will, as Coolsville has been canonicalized in Scooby-Doo's lore ever since, appearing or being referenced across film and TV. Fred specifically is a genuine love for the town and its people.
The people of Coolsville are the best in the world!
Even though we know, in our real world, that Coolsville has only existed for about half the lifespan of the Scooby-Doo franchise, which is precisely why Fred's alleged negative sentiment towards this established locale, particularly in a film that celebrates the franchise's history through the return of classic monsters, is deeply ironic. It speaks to the tension between nostalgia and the desire for novelty that has always characterized the Scooby-Doo series. This is a franchise that constantly revisits familiar elements while also attempting to introduce new ones, something I've explored in more detail in a previous video. But even though the original cartoons never mentioned it, and some modern entries might replace their hometown with Crystal Cove or something like it, Fred Jones is a guy from Coolsville, right? It just fits. Unlike the jarring bluntness of
Sucks!
I love this punchy terseness of the word sucks in what is ostensibly a family-friendly film, and I think it warrants further examination. While Hanna-Barbera cartoons were generally known for their less edgy content compared to later animation, audience sensibilities and acceptable language has evolved over time. Growing up, my parents wouldn't let me say the word sucks, but here's Freddie Prinze Jr. saying it in a film for children like I was at the time. And he's putting some real stink on it.
I think Coolsville sucks. No! Don't record that!
Unfortunately, the power with which he says it is immediately wielded against him.
All Fred Jones had to say was,
I think Coolsville sucks.
This act highlights how even a few words, when taken out of their original meaning and amplified by the media, can be a potent tool for shaping public perception and inciting a mob mentality. This scenario, while fictional, touches upon the concept of manufacturing consent. The idea that media outlets, even when seemingly objective, filter and shape news in ways that favor the interest of powerful elites.
What's with the personal attacks?
look, I'm a huge fan. It's just my editor
kidding?
Who are you kidding?
In Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, the evil masked figure, the whole villain of the film, is revealed to be Heather Jasper Howe, who herself is revealed to be the disguised Dr. Jonathan Jacobo, a past adversary of Mystery Inc. Now, he may not be a powerful elite himself, but he's still using the same tools to his advantage. In disguise as Howe, she leverages her position as a reporter to discredit the gang and manipulate the citizens of Coolsville, citizens who initially celebrated Mystery Inc. with a museum dedicated to their achievements. But now, it's those same people who want to drive Scooby and the gang out of town. Putting this all together, this phrase can be recontextualized when we look at the current landscape of the entertainment industry, specifically the animation wing of Warner Brothers Discovery.
You're trying to make it look like I think Coolsville sucks.
You may not know this, but Scooby-Doo is a franchise that has been on the air for over 50 years. And I don't just mean it was created over 50 years. I mean that every single year since its creation, there has been a new entry in TV or film. And in the few off years that it didn't create anything new, there was at least one network actively airing reruns.
And that show has been on the air continually since 1968. So it's been on the air 33 years.
This is obviously an old clip. Scooby's streak is nearly double this today. However, last year, under David Zaslav's reign, this legacy was diminished to a single subpar Halloween special for the universally derided Velma series. I don't think anyone was asking for this, but at the very least, we've kept this streak alive. And although there is some new Scoob promised this year, last year's near miss reveals even further Zaslav's fundamental disrespect for animation.
I had to find something that really interested me, something that I really loved.
As if we needed any more proof after he also canceled projects like Scoob Holiday Haunt, a finished film that Warner Brothers Discovery refuses to release. This event highlights the precarious nature of animated productions, even within established franchises. The financial considerations of media conglomerates can override creative endeavors, leaving creators and audiences feeling like something they valued has been unfairly discarded.
Old Man Nichols,
caught red-handed in your foul monster-making scheme with your ugly, evil henchman.
Henchman? Young man, we're investors and we're listening to his pitch. Shh.
In this light, Fred's fabricated sentiment could, in modern context, be read as a darkly humorous foreshadowing of a reality where entire animated worlds can be deemed unprofitable, and thus, in a corporate sense, disposable. And remember, Fred was named after a TV executive, an executive who only ever spoke enthusiastically about getting to help bring rich animated worlds to life. Yet now, in a cruel twist, it's the current executives in charge of Scooby-Doo's fate who are effectively saying, I think Coolsville sucks. No, don't record that.